Welcome back. Today, my guest is, as you already know, the lovely Miss Valli Oreilly. Valli, thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
being our guest here today. This young lady has traveled from Los Angeles to visit with us here at MUA TV Studio in Orlando, Florida. As you can see, we are sitting right in the middle of Lake Eola, and our birds have become very friendly here. And hopefully they won't become too much more friendly.
Yeah.
But we are right here in beautiful sunny Florida, and the weather just became fabulous when you arrived. Prior to your arrival, it was very rainy and not so nice. But now that you're here, everything seems to be blossoming and very, very wonderful. And
Good.
I want to go way back, and I look at your resume, and I see so many fantastic movies that you've done. It seems as though you started even at the very beginning of your career working films that were pretty big films. Let's go all the way back and let's talk about Valli Oreilly and where you grew up and how you grew up and how you became interested in makeup and what drove you in that direction. Where are you from?
Well, I was born in Canada, and I, grew up in that cold, cold climate where we didn't really have much exposure to the film business there. I mean, we watched movies and everything, but there wasn't sort of the opportunities. They didn't have like makeup schools or, there wasn't the opportunities that there are in the United States, especially now. There's so many more opportunities. And I really didn't have an interest in makeup as a child. I really didn't have an interest in film. I mean, I liked to draw, so I sort of pursued an art background. I mean, I started drawing very young. I took sculpting classes and ballet and things like that when I was younger. And it wasn't until I was in university that I was kind of exposed to people doing sort of these indie films, and they would ask me for their graduate, they were all doing their student films, if I would work on them.
Excuse me, what university and what were you studying?
Well, I went to the Ontario College of Art, and I went to the University of Toronto, and I was studying art.
So you knew you wanted to do something in the art.
In the arts, yeah, and I was interested. Well, I was interested in theater way more than I was film, and not necessarily makeup. I, thought that maybe I would get into set designing, or I like to create and do things that were really creative. So, and if you do set design or anything sort of in the theater, it's it's very creative, and usually the production designer has some say so in the costumes and in the makeup and in the lighting and everything.
So did they just throw you in and say, we need you to do makeup?
Well, yeah, initially, at first I was disappointed that I was going to be doing makeup, because they initially told me that, the first job I ever did, they said, well, you're going to do all the props. I didn't even know what that meant, to be honest. And I just thought, okay, that means I'll just be getting things for the props that they use. I didn't realize that every scene had, major props that you had to match and all that kind of thing.
A lot of work.
A lot of work, especially when I didn't have a clue. I'd never worked on a movie before. So then they said, oh, forget that. We're going to give you one of the girl jobs. I thought, girl jobs? They said, you're going to be doing the makeup and the hair. And I was like, really? And they said, yeah. So I said, well, what do I do? Where do I go to get stuff? So there was a theatrical makeup store in the city, so I kind of went there and I saw they had all these makeup books. So I bought like a Richard Corson makeup book, because I thought, well, I better read up if I'm going to be doing makeup on these people. And they were, professional actors. And so I got the book and I started looking up, what I needed to buy just to sort of, there was no blood in it or anything like that. It was just straight makeups. And so I just purchased, and then I used to work part-time in a drugstore. So I had some makeup from that where people would give you samples and everything. So I sort of bought a fishing tackle box and threw everything together. And I didn't tell anybody I'd never done makeup before. And so all these actors loved the way their makeup looked. And so then people kept asking me to go on other low-budget films. I think that one they actually paid me on that one. I think I made $25 a week,
Right.
and that was great because it covered my, subway fare and
Right.
bus fare to get to the jobs, and I had a really good time. We
This
worked
was-
20-hour days.
Where was this?
This was in Canada, but and then after that, I sort of got back into my art thing, and I didn't really. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do. I did a bunch of fashion stuff because then people I knew that were photographers. They'd say, "Can you do this makeup?" And they would just pay me cash. And then after all that, somebody had told me they were doing Porky's. Remember those Porky's films?
Yes.
And so they were going to be shooting that in Florida. And I said, "Oh, I would love to go to Miami." And so they said, "Okay, well, we'll ask if they need a makeup person." And it was a New York union job, so I can't. I don't know how they got around that, but somehow they got around it. And I think I had to hire a New York person to shadow
stand
me.
by,
Yeah,
right.
but they ended up being great and like helping.
Can you
pitching
remember
in.
who that person was?
Yeah, her name was Marie Del Russo.
Marie Del Russo.
And so I went and worked. Well, actually, I did 2 of the Porky's movies, so she was on the second one. On the first one, I can't remember the name of the girl that helped me. But anyway, they were from New York, local, living in Miami.
I see.
And so I did all the makeup on that, and then I, ended up meeting somebody on the movie, and we started to be boyfriend and girlfriend, and then they lived in California, and I went out there to visit them, and then later on we ended up getting married, and so that's when I moved to LA. But I had no intention of ever living. I didn't like LA when I first went there, because I thought, where's the city?
Right.
Like I kept looking for the city, and there wasn't one. I was used to like New York and Montreal, Toronto, like that are sort of cosmopolitan cities. So I couldn't I couldn't really. And I didn't want to drive. I wanted to be able to just take cabs and take the subway and everything, and you have to drive in LA, really, or you never. So the first time I had to get anywhere, I said, I'm not getting a car. So I remember my boyfriend at the time dropped me off at the bus stop, and I got a map, and about 3 hours later I called him crying, and like I hadn't even gotten to my destination yet because it's just had to take too many buses. So, and then
And that's when the bus system was very efficient.
But I'm sure it was more efficient then, yeah.
And
So
a lot less people.
this was in the early 80s. So, yeah, and then it just, I just did whatever jobs I could get in LA when I moved there. Anything.
What was the first makeup that you did when you were still in school? You just started out. What was that makeup? What type of makeup did you do?
Well,
Can you remember the play?
well, no, the first thing I actually
It was a film, right?
was a film. I don't remember even the name of the film, but one of the first jobs I did, because I used to sculpt, was this makeup man asked me if I could sculpt some monkey faces. So I said, sure. I didn't even really understand what it was for, and he said, I'll pay you, and I was like, great. So I was out of plasticine, so I sculpted these bust-size, like Planet of the Apes type monkey faces, and then he gave me the money, and it was
You have
like
photos of these?
somewhere maybe at my parents' place
See if you can
somewhere.
find
Yeah,
them, show
yeah.
them.
I'm sure they're horrendous, but anyway, and he cast them and used them for some job he was doing. So, I think he paid me $50, or and
They weren't for prosthetics.
Well, I did the bust, and then
Yes.
he used them for prosthetics.
Oh, I see.
I didn't know what he was going to really be using them for,
Right.
but I'm sure he made a chunk of change, and you know what I mean?
Right.
So
Isn't
he kept
that's
using
usual,
me.
isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
We're the ghost makeup artists. I can recall when I started my career that I was very, very young, and when the makeup artists in Hollywood, a few of them,
Yeah.
one in particular, realized that I could do appliances, he would get all these jobs,
Right.
and I would do the appliances, and he would make most of the money and
Right.
give me $100 and
Right.
get all the credit, and I was never, in the credits. That's how it is. But you do what you have to
Right.
do to get started.
Well, I didn't care about that. I just cared about the money back then. I didn't really think, I wasn't really planning on being a makeup artist, so, But,
The first film. Let's go to Hollywood now. The very first film that you did in Hollywood. Let's talk about that. How did you get this film?
I got I did a bunch of commercials when I first moved to LA, because I just took whatever jobs I could get. And I think the first film, I met someone on a commercial, and they said they had someone they wanted to introduce me to, which was this hairdresser that they thought I'd really get along with. And so once I sort of met her, and she said, well, you know, I've got some really low-budget film coming up, so I'll call you, you know. And she did, and it was Savage Streets or something like that, you know, really bad, low-budget film, so...
So that's where it all began.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, if you had, you could give advice, which is what I'm asking you to do, because we have, you people out there don't know, but we've got about 22 or 23 people sitting here. They're all of our graduates.
Right.
What's the most important word of advice that you would give to these newcomers to the business?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, you should decide like why you want to be a makeup artist. Do you want to be a makeup artist because you're an artistic person and you like doing the art? Do you want to make a ton of money? Is that your motivation? Because you can sort of forget that. No, but do you want, I'm just kidding. And do you want to, just be around celebrities? I mean, you have to really think about why you're there. Because if it's just because you want to be around celebrities and because you want to make a ton of money, those are the wrong reasons. I mean, the best advice I can give you for like entering the job world is to take whatever jobs come your way, because every job leads to another job. You just never know who you're going to meet, or what, from one job that seems like nothing that you've done for free could lead you to another job where you're going to make some, great money, and to something ultimately really creative. So when you start out, don't be so worried about getting that big, high-paying job, because you really need to start on things maybe where you're not even getting paid at all. Because if you're, like, student films are the best thing to do on any of the universities when they're doing student films, because if they're not paying you, then they can't expect you to be like Joe Blasco, So if you make some mistakes, that's okay. And if, and you're learning, on the spot. So
right.
You need to take a lot of those jobs to learn how a set works, because no book is ever going to really tell you how, how everything goes. Yeah,
absolutely.
exactly.
The politics and the protocol. I like working jobs free because, beggars can't be choosers. So if you make a mistake, they can't complain.
Yeah, they can't come after you. We paid you all this money, and this looks terrible. Yeah.
Mortuary makeup. No, nobody complains.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the family could.
Yeah.
But not normally. All right. So, out of all of the people, now you've worked with so many people. If you forgive me for doing this.
That's okay. I have to look myself.
You have worked with so many people, and you've been department head on so many wonderful films. You've gotten an Academy Award for Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. And out of all of these people, you have become personal makeup artist to quite a few of them.
Right.
And give us name a few of the people that you've been working with more than others as personal makeup artists. Too.
Well, I've worked with Dustin Hoffman for about 8 years now, and I think that as far as sort of A-list actors go, you can't get much better than him. Also, too, I like the fact that he isn't one of these people that is stuck to just wanting to look like a great version of himself. He likes playing a lot of characters, so every job is a challenge and different, like from Mr. Megorium to Perfume.
Love that.
Or, even Meet the Fockers, and so that's somebody I really enjoy working with, and he's a really great actor, and we collaborate on the characters, and it's really fun. And he's got a lot of energy, and he brings a lot to the table, and he's into trying anything. Weird teeth,
Right.
Though he doesn't like, we have now there's a list where we tick off stuff. He goes, remind me next time not to take a job where I'm wearing prosthetics. Tick.
Well, little big man.
Yeah.
I'm sure he has a few little
but
big
now,
men.
Yeah. I think knowing his personality, I don't know how he sat through that. And then, he doesn't even like small prosthetics.
Maybe you better expound on that just a little bit. Knowing his personality.
Well, he has a lot of energy, and in order to sit through that kind of a makeup, it's, that's, especially back then, things were a lot slower than they are now. Right. So I just don't know how he sat still without having to have a lot of breaks.
Right, there you go.
You know, and also too, he gets very warm. You know, he's one of those people that has a lot of body heat. So having that appliance, you know, on oneself, you know, I just know he must have been sweating like crazy. It must have been hard for Dick Smith as well to do that makeup. But so and now he's got a thing about, you know, then we had to do I did Curb Your Enthusiasm with him. It was the last episode. And he and Sacha Baron Cohen had to have full biblical beards and wigs and wool biblical outfits, and there was no air conditioning in the studio. Okay. So we shot like about 18 hours, so they were freaking out because they said they felt so claustrophobic. Right. So, but it was funny. It added to the, you know, people love that episode. Yeah,
that's a great show.
Yeah,
that was kind of a breath of fresh air when that show came on the air.
Yeah, it was a great show. Yeah,
David is just fantastic.
It's you know, it's reality-based humor.
Yes.
So,
yes.
You know.
Of all of the makeups that you have done, and you've done a little bit of everything, you're one of those very few among us that is able to do, you know, beauty makeup, aging makeups, hair work, et cetera, effects makeup. Out of all of that, do you have a favorite that you know that you get excited about when you get a call and you read a script and you go, oh wow, I need to do a beard, or oh, a bald cap, or this or that?
Well, I can't say I get all excited over bald caps.
I don't think anybody does.
And you know, because I'm such a perfectionist that if it's not absolutely perfect, you know, I'll just take it off, even if, you know, they say, oh, well, you can just patch that. So, and it's not something I do on a regular basis. Character sort of more sort of what would you say, like stylized beauty makeup, where things like I did in Alice in Wonderland on Anne Hathaway, those are the kind of makeups I really like doing.
Yes.
So where it's character and it's fashion-y, you know, where they could walk down the runway in a, you know, Jean Paul Gaultier show or something. So those are the makeups I like to do. With a little bit of fantasy hair involved in with it. Or,
are you a hairdresser as well?
No, I'm not. But I mean, I can do you know, a little bit of you know, if it wasn't on a movie, if it was for a photo shoot and it had to be a really stylized character, you know, I can improvise.
Yes.
I would never say I'm like a hairdresser or a wig master or anything like that. So
before we get into the specific films that you've done, I want you to talk about being a department head, because there are so many people that don't really understand the full latitude and responsibility of being a department head in charge.
Right.
Give me a rundown of how you approach doing department heading a film. Let's break it down into two different types of films. Let's say just the straight film where there are not many effects first, and then afterwards you can give us a rundown on how you approach a film that does have effects.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, it's really important for me who my key makeup artist is. It's like if you're a policeman doing homicide, you want to make sure that you have good backup or you're dead. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to look at a movie like that where you need somebody that can run with the ball and sort of watches your back and make sure if you forget something that they'll remember it. So they fill in the blanks. So that's the most important on even if you were just doing the news and you needed an assistant. You have to have somebody that's really sharp to work with you. Now, you know, from my personal experience, I like to not just take. I've a few times taken people where I looked at their credits and I looked at their work, but I'd never really seen them work, and it ended up being not so good. So for me, I prefer to ease into using somebody as my second by seeing them maybe run my background for me and that kind of thing. So, you know, the responsibilities on just like a regular movie, like a romantic comedy, say, you basically have to break down the script and write down all the pointers that you want to ask the director when you have a meeting, or, you know, other things that really aren't that important to the director for your production meeting. And you need to write down what supplies you want, and you organize the trailer before you go in and label everything and put everything away so that you know where everything is.
Do you communicate in production meetings? Do you find yourself communicating with the DP and you know, the various people?
Well, it
and
depends.
To what
Like,
degree?
really only with the DP during makeup tests, because when you do the makeup test, it's really important that you find out what film stock they're using and see what kind of lighting he's doing on your actress. And there's some people that are light the room, and there's some people that light the actors. And I prefer to work with people that light the actors, because then I have less aggravation.
Yeah, we used to say at ABC, we called this one fellow the Prince of Darkness, one of the lighting guys, and he would light the set, and the people just kind of got in the way.
Yeah, well, that's how some DPs are.
Right.
It just depends. If they come from beauty, like commercials, then you've scored.
Right.
But if they come from documentary, or where they really are known for the scenery, then a lot of times they really don't have the patience to light the actors.
Yes,
so.
yes. And during a beauty makeup, it's really like the type of lighting, of course, depending on the age of the performer and the character that they're portraying, but there is a definite difference in an art in knowing how to do a mature woman's makeup as well as their lighting. And the lighting, they have to work obviously hand in hand.
Oh, right, right.
And corrective makeup is so little these days understood by many of the artists who have not been formally trained, And the art of highlighting and shading and neutralizing is kind of somewhat, unless you are actually going to a makeup school or apprenticing with someone who understands that, I've seen so many films where people are made up just as though they were just doing a street makeup. And I wonder, I say, well, why do I see all the shadows under the eyes? Why do I see like red spots and blemishes? And why wasn't that neutralized? And it's because they're not following the standard, actually old school professional ways of doing makeup artistry. And from what I see of all of your work, you understand that to a fault. You really get in there and you really do a beautiful job of correction. But you're blending your correction with style, which is very evident in Alice in Wonderland.
Well, I had it easier than, say, you guys are going to have it, because when I started for the first, 20 years of my career, or 17 years, there was no high definition. So high definition, you really have to know how to blend.
Right. What did we say that it was?
Horrible decision to make that way of filming.
Now, you started in makeup back when, in the early 80s?
It is, yes,
in the early 80s.
Yeah.
What changes have you seen, or have you felt in the industry, film-wise, digital-wise, and lighting-wise, that have definitely forced you to make changes in your technique of application?
Well, makeup now, less is more, because back, when I first started, the style of makeup was different. Like in the 80s, if you look at like Saturday Night Fever and you see what the makeup looked like from those styles, people wore a lot more makeup, and it was just, I look now and I'm like, ugh. But I guess that's back in now. But anyway, most of the actresses now like to look natural. And I think if you're doing, and this is just my opinion, but if I'm doing a film that's just a present-day romance, say, then you don't want the distraction of too much makeup on the leading actress's face. And you also don't want to set it up for yourself, because sometimes they'll jump around all over the place with continuity. So you don't want to be changing her makeup a million times and have a million different looks, because people don't do that in real life. Because otherwise you're going to find yourself like, they say, okay, now we're going to move to scene 89, and you think, oh my God, you've got to tell the first AD, well, that's it, like it's going to take me like 45 minutes to change her makeup, so you need to sort of keep it simple. So, because time is money for production, so when you're designing the makeup for your artist, you find like a makeup that she would wear every day. And then, if there's like a dinner scene, you figure out a way that you can transform her quickly into a nicer makeup for the dinner scene. And then, because if they start jumping all over the place, you're going to find yourself not a big fan of the AD department. And just when they have to edit the movie, there's many more chances for you to make a mistake.
Right. And continuity and matching.
Yeah.
What artist, as you began developing in your early career and you began doing makeup, obviously you began to study film and look at the makeup.
Right.
What artist influenced you more than any other?
Makeup artist,
Yeah,
or
makeup artist. Is there any one artist that you watched, observed their work, and said, I really like that, I'm going to try to emulate that in what I do? Or were there several artists?
well, probably several, but I mean, there's other people that are sort of my contemporaries whose work I really like. Well, my friend Ronnie Spector, for one, who I know has been on this show, and
She's a graduate.
yeah, of your school,
Yes.
and makeup a man named Richard Dean.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Richard, phenomenal.
Yeah.
When I first came out with my products, Richard was the first
Right.
and only at that time, makeup artist in New York, who actually took the time to call and to tell us how much he loved the foundation.
Well, that's
and
great.
how much he was using it.
Right.
And to thank us
Right.
for coming out with the foundation. And I hadn't really known of Richard.
Right.
And then since then, I've been following his career and seeing all of the wonderful work he does. And I'm very proud to know that this is one makeup artist that does understand all of our colors and products. You know. So thank you, Richard. We have to have you on our show one day.
Yeah. Well, another person who I like, who I had the pleasure of working with, he came in and because he works with Meryl Streep all the
Yes.
time, is J. Roy Helen,
Yes.
and I actually sponsored him to get into the academy,
Yes.
and I like his work
He's
too. He's
fantastic.
fantastic with character. He
Yes.
really is.
Yes.
And
Did he do? He obviously did her makeup. for
he
the
always,
Devil Wears Prada. He always worked
he
with her.
always does,
Fantastic,
does her
yeah.
makeup. Well, he did her for Bridges of Madison County.
Yes.
He did her for Out of Africa.
Yes.
But I think he's very clever.
Yeah.
I think, I enjoy looking at it. So these are people that, I mean, a little bit older than me,
Right.
but I really, have seen a lot of his film and worked with him, and I think that he does really good
He's another
work.
artist
Yeah.
that we have to have
Yeah,
here.
yeah. He's really
he really
good.
does. I've always admired her makeup, and he seems to have a real mastery of the highlighting.
Right,
and
right,
the
right,
shading.
right.
It's really terrific.
And I'm sure there's many more people. I just can't think of it right now.
Right.
'Cause
Now, do you still
a bit
find
jet-lagged.
yourself going to a film specifically to study the makeup, or are you?
Well, if the makeup is, if I go to films usually because I want to go to see the film, and sometimes there'll be films that I want to go see, maybe because of the makeup, but for the most part, I'll just want to go and enjoy the film. And I actually have to vote on the movies because I'm on the committee, so come Oscar time, I have to sit through like every single movie.
Yeah.
But I only notice the makeup if it's absolutely extraordinary or bad.
That was one of the last lines in Richard Corson's book. A makeup which calls attention to itself
Right,
is of no use to the performer.
right. Well, that's what happens, I think, because the actor doesn't want to be second to the makeup,
Right.
unless it's a character. So, you just, if somebody, like I said before, has too much makeup on.
Okay, now, as I really, really respect what you've done, department heading, you're phenomenal with all of that. You seem to have a real mastery of how to handle people. When you hire someone to come in to do a show, obviously you're selecting them because of their talent, because of their personality, but if you've never worked with these people before, and you suddenly realize that they're not really of the same chemistry,
Right.
how do you handle removing them from the scene?
Well, you basically, it depends on the situation. I usually give somebody one chance, and I go up and in private, I talk to them, and I just say to them that, they need to, pull up their socks, kind of thing, or I'm going to have to replace them.
Right.
So, but sometimes it's a matter of, makeup's really an individual thing. Like I can give you makeup, and I can give all 4 of those girls makeup, and say, okay, this is what I use. Make this person up that I always make up. And it's a matter of application. So, 1 out of the 5 makeups might be good, you know what I mean? So, or be able to,
Well, they'll follow the style.
yeah,
that
so
you
sometimes
want.
you get people that you can't, no matter what you give them, they can't do the style that you're looking for. And in that case, I've made the mistake twice in my career of not letting the person go and keeping them for whatever
Yes.
guilt reasons I had for not firing them. And it's actually, as a boss, it's a bad thing because your responsibility is to get the people to look a certain way, get everything on time, don't go over budget, and, you know, to be a good boss and get everything moving. And if you have somebody in your team that's slowing everything down, or you're not getting, it's like a marriage. If you're not happy, you get a divorce. So you know, you need to, or you're going to be miserable. And I put myself in a position where I took on too much because my second couldn't cut the mustard. So it's better to, you know,
Did you keep them
fire
on
people.
through the entire film?
Yeah, I kept them on through the entire film, and I was so exhausted at the end of the film.
Draining,
yeah,
isn't
it's
it?
draining, and you know, it's not really good for them either because I,
for
you
the
know,
performer.
perform, you know, and I wasn't. Well, the actors, I'm good at keeping everything quiet, but it's just, you know, you don't want to have to micromanage everybody. You know, I don't want to be the one that's doing everything, because if I have a good assistant, I basically will find out what the director wants once we get the looks together, and then you divide. You know, you can't. That's another thing that you shouldn't do, because some makeup artists do. They want to do everybody, all the stars, and then give their second nobody to do. You know, the day players. And then you find out everybody's in the same scene together, so then what do you do? Then the actors are frustrated because they're waiting for, you know. So you need to find somebody that you think is almost as good as you to have as your backup, and then you divvy up the work.
Right, exactly.
You know.
Exactly. Do you find that working as a department head is more fulfilling to you rather than working as a personal?
No.
Which do you prefer?
Well, I've been able to, it just depends, you know, it depends. Like, it depends on the job, it really does, and it depends on the person. You know, I've been a personal for people where I've been bored because they want the same makeup every single movie. They just have no interest in changing their look. And, you know, department head, it sort of gives you, if it's something like Alice in Wonderland or Mambo Kings or one of the movies I did that were very stylized, you know, it's like a big canvas, and you can, you know, you can really be artistic. So
it obviously depends on the actor.
Yeah, it depends on the
project.
situation. Yeah.
Let me go down a few of the titles here. Let's start.
Can I take a sip of water?
Yeah, you certainly can. You know what? You know what we're going to do? We're going to take a little break right now.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take a little bit of a break, and don't you go away. We'll be right back with Valli Oreilly right after this.